There's no fire here for the fireside chat.
We could have had 2 ferns, but we didn't. We didn't arrange it.
That's right.
Next year. Next year.
These are comfy chairs, though. That's good.
Well,
Hi, everybody.
There was a much longer bio for you, but I think we, for the purposes of time, we didn't want to do it.
It's all blah, blah, blah. You guys know who I am, so
all right.
you know, we can just get to it.
Let me just do one or 2 highlights. So number 1, I remember People magazine came out with like Sexiest Men Alive or Sexiest People Alive. And, you know, I don't read People magazine, guys, but, you know, I might have been at a grocery store or something like that. And I think I was out of college a few years, and I see Daniel on there. I'm like, wait, so statistically, if he's the only Korean in this issue, then he's the sexiest Korean alive for sure. So I think all those Koreans back at home were a little bent out of shape. So I just want to, like, and the show Lost, by the way, who watched Lost? I mean, that was like the first authentic human being, non-stereotyped character I saw on American network television. So, you know, Daniel and I became friends way later than this, so he doesn't know this, but you know, he's my hyungnim. I look up to him, but he's also like, you know, role models. We had like Bruce Lee in the 70s, and then we had Daniel.
No. Don't put me in the same breath as Bruce Lee, bro.
I mean,
don't do that.
You got to take off your shirt and show him your moves, but, you know. But anyways, so joking aside.
You first.
No. 2 kids in, I'm a late bloomer. We don't want to do that. All right, so on a more serious note, you and I are both 1.5 generation. We were born in Korea. We came here when, you know, we were babies. Thanks to my parents who are here, by the way. So the 1.5 generation folks in the room, you know this. You learn how to be an American side by side with your parents, right? And that's a different experience. And if you get lucky enough to have the resources to go to school and pursue whatever your heart dreams of, that's a great thing, but it comes with its own challenges. Mm-hmm. You grew up in New York and Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania when you were a little bit older. So I want to hear about how you ended up going into the art of theater, growing up as a Korean American, 1.5 generation in New York, and then Pennsylvania. If you could give us a little bit of that, and then we'll jump forward into what you're doing today and tomorrow.
Sure. Yeah, I was born in Busan, and I Busan in the house. Woo! All right. And I came over when I was a little over 1 year old, and we moved to. My father was a doctor, and he was finishing up his medical school in the Bronx and Long Island, and so that was the first place where my family and I lived. And then we moved to Pennsylvania when I was in elementary school. So I spent most of my childhood in Pennsylvania, but it was unusual because when I first moved to Pennsylvania, I lived in this neighborhood that was very diverse, very multicultural. I was with an African-American family, a German family, a Jewish family, a Taiwanese family, you know, and my family. And the neighborhood I grew up in all the kids were friends. We used to go knock on each other's doors and say, you know, can Johnny come out and play? It was that kind of a neighborhood. But it wasn't until I moved to the next town over in 6th grade where I first became aware of being an outsider, of being the subject of stereotypes. And so that's when I had a different kind of awareness of, you know, how I exist in this community. And so my life changed a little bit after that. And, you know, I think I felt the need to become exceptional in some way and I don't mean exceptional as in better, I meant exceptional as differentiating myself somehow, because somehow, for the first time in my life, I recognized that I felt a little bit invisible. And I felt like certain things, people weren't knowing me for who I was. People made assumptions based upon what I looked like. And so I don't know if that was one of the reasons I started to become an actor, but if that's true, it was latent, because when I started college, I was a political science major and I was going to become a lawyer. My dad always told, my parents always told me, and some of you can relate to this, there are only 3 jobs in the world: doctor, lawyer, and garbage man. So if you're not one of the first 2, you're definitely going to be the 3rd. So he didn't know about VCs. All of you guys are VC and finance people, but he would have added that one to the list, I'm sure. But yeah, so when I decided to become an actor, there were some difficult times in the family. You know, my parents went to good schools in Korea, and when times were tough with my parents, they would say to me, like, we didn't suffer and struggle and come to America for you to do a job that you don't even need a college education for, and so it was tough. It was tough, and for a couple of years, my dad and I weren't talking, and in retrospect, I really understand, why he felt the way he did. He wanted security for me, and wanted security, for my future family. He didn't want me to have to struggle, and because they had their own struggle as immigrants. And the other thing is, when they came to America, and their idea of a movie star was not someone who looked like us. They had their own movie stars, like Montgomery Clift and Rock Hudson and all those guys. And so that was not in the realm of their possibility. So they didn't see it, so they couldn't imagine it, which is, I think, really an important part of why diversity is so important. Because once you see it on the screen, you can imagine it and you can hope to be it. You can aspire to do it. And that's not just for kids, but that's for adults as well.
That's interesting. So sometimes the limit of the vision of the parents can be actually like constraining to the child. So as a parent, I think that's really impactful. So basically everyone, if your kid says they're going to do something you don't think it's possible, I think we should be more open-minded.
Well, I would say that also applies for a philosophy of giving, too. Like the people in this room are doing very non-traditional things. Like we were talking, I was listening about the stories of everyone who was up here before me, and they had their own struggles with their parents because they did not do the expected thing either. And for Koreans and Asian Americans, well, I don't want to say all Asian Americans, but let's say for Koreans, it is not typical to think about the larger community and to think about helping others up who are less fortunate. The focus is always on you and your family and making sure your family is safe, but not. So I would encourage people to expand their range of vision and look to a larger community as family and have that same philosophy, especially if you're financially well enough off to do that.
When you've been an actor now, and now a producer and a director. You've expanded, but you've been 30 years in this business in Hollywood. Did you have people that helped lift you up? Were there any mentors or boosters along the way?
Yeah, and I think this is I'm so glad you asked that question, because a lot of what gets lost in the shuffle of race politics or diversity and inclusion is the fact that we all have had allies. We all have had mentors. We all have had people who have given us a hand up when others wouldn't. And not all of those people look like us. Mm-hmm. And, I don't mind telling you guys that when I was starting out in my career, there were studio executives who were Asian, but they never helped me. I never had an agent who was Asian until maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And that is not to say that there were no agents or studio executives who were Asian at the time, but they bought the party line that, Asians will never make money, so I'm not going to represent them. I'll drink with them, I'll go sing with them, but I'm not going to represent them. And I remember those days very clearly. And I remember those people very clearly, because now some of those people are all about, go Asians! But they weren't there before. They weren't there. And so that's a negative, but the positive to that is that the allies and the mentors that I had were, by and large, white men. And you know, as we talk about the polarization in this country, I think what's really most important, I think, Sean, you talked about this too, is that it's about a commonality in philosophy. What matters more than the color of your skin is what you believe, and whether you believe that we can all live together as one society and raise each other up, as opposed to look at the divisions and our own specificities as reasons to alienate one another. So allyship, it's just a long way of saying allyship is crucial. Regardless of your race or sexual orientation, your gender, helping each other is something that crosses all of those things.
You and I have talked about intersectionality and allyship, and you're involved in TAF, which is a new organization that's come together with a lot of people from the finance background and media background. Gold House, which has done a great job of community around media representation. You've also, been our representative, our unofficial representative to the White House over the last few years. During the COVID period, where Asian hate was front and center on news and everyone was looking over their shoulder, you went in and pushed them and testified to get certain bills into place and law. Your role is one, to entertain, to provide escapism, to tell stories, but it's also been a very real, significant role for all of us. Perhaps a legislator that we didn't actually have, perhaps a senator that we actually weren't able to elect. You've been doing a lot of these things. How do you think about your role moving forward? You've got a production company, you're an actor, you're busy. I see you kind of jetting around everywhere and showing up for the community. But you're also doing some really important work for us as a community and for others, right? Not just Asian Americans.
I think because of the work that I do as an actor, these issues of representation and diversity were things that I came across very early on, from the time that I started, because if you're an actor, your product is this. If you're a water bottle company, that's your product, and you can separate yourself from that product. But how do you separate yourself from your own appearance, from your own background, from your own heritage? And so, I always find it funny when people, mostly people who are not of color, which is in and of itself is a funny term, but they say, you know what, I don't see race. And I always think to myself, what a privileged position that must be, that you don't see race. Because for someone like me, or someone who is not of the majority, they don't have a choice but to be seen as race. And so, for me, that was part of the reason why I knew that when these issues of diversity and inclusion were coming up, that I had a platform to speak about it in the sphere of influence that I had, which is entertainment. And the other thing is that entertainment is a passive value delivery system. I think about a lot of my friends in Korea who speak really good English, and I ask them, like, how did you learn English? You never lived in the States. And they said, well, I just watched a bunch of episodes of Friends, and that's how I learned my English. And I thought, how amazing that is, that American culture, a TV show, is the way that people learn English. And I thought to myself, well, what else are they learning from watching Friends if they're learning language? You're going to learn that you can be 20-something beautiful and live in a fabulous apartment in New York and hang out in a cafe all day. But the point is that every value about dating, about morality, also gets delivered in that TV show. So entertainment is powerful. That's why they call it soft power. Yeah. Oh. And when we talk about narrative change, you can either perpetuate stereotypes or you can do something to change them. You can do something to progress our culture. So when I had the opportunity to become a producer, that's what became central to my work. And that's what I continue to try to do.
We were talking backstage about the theme of KACF's gala this year, which is about investing in our future. And one of the things that I feel that we haven't done well, and I'll take some criticism after the show for this, but I feel like the Korean American community hasn't come together in the way that I would have hoped over the last 20, 30 years, not only in business but just in social issues. I feel like it's starting to happen, especially over the last few years. Do you think that maybe perhaps investing in our future, if you could run with investing in each other, and not only each other as Korean Americans, but also in our allies, whether it's the Black community or the Latino community or the Jewish community or the Muslim community, whether it's the LGBTQA community, all of these areas, I think that we as a group, whether it's San Francisco or elsewhere, we could do more to reach out and be an ally to others. Can you talk a little bit about the ways that you see that we can invest, whether we're a lawyer, a VC, a entrepreneur, or an entertainer, or a creative person? What can we do as an individual in our world to do that better?
Well, you hit on so many different points there. I will say that it's super important for our community, our Korean American community, to come together in a way that we can amplify our own power and lift each other up in order to be able to lift other people up. And so even Asian groups now, I think there's so much power in grassroots organizations, and then when I see the competition among them, I feel like it's so self-defeating. And it's a hard thing to try and fight for those dollars. We know that less than 1% of philanthropic giving goes to Asian American groups. Less than 1%. I think the statistic is like 0.2% of all giving goes to Asian American groups. So of course we're all fighting for that meager amount as community-based organizations. But if we can find a way to work together, we amplify the need for our communities. And our diaspora, our Asian American diaspora, is so huge that if we can find a way to harness the collective power of all over 100 or over 30 ethnicities, 100 different languages, 23 million people, largest growing ethnic group in the country, then we can do better for all of us, right? So, I'm not used to all these applause lines. I just feel like if this was my family dinner table, my kids would be dozing off right now. But yeah, and in terms of intersectionality, I think we can show strength in our community by helping other communities. There is a tendency right now to say, well, the Asian community needs this, the African American community needs this, the Latinx community needs this, but we all have a lot of commonality in terms of the struggles we face in America. So if we can focus on those commonalities, I think there are ways that we can activate our own spheres of influence. Whether you're a VC, how many companies that are not Asian-led are in your portfolio? If you're an attorney, are you doing any pro bono work that would help any of these causes that we're talking about? Are you donating to causes like KACF? Are you devoting any time to a CBO? These kinds of things, I think, are questions that we can just ask ourselves. It is a complex question. It's not simply answered by you've got to do more. That's only one part of the equation. But a sense of personal responsibility for the future, I think, is important. And I think a lot about the world that we're leaving behind for our kids' generation. Are we making it better for them, or are we perpetuating the status quo? And if the answer is the last thing, at least for me, that's not acceptable. And so that's what fuels me, and I think that's what fuels a lot of people in this room. And so if you are like-minded in that way, how do you activate that philosophy into daily action? How do you form that community that makes your strength multiplied? So these are all important things, and not everyone has a platform like a Twitter account that reaches a lot of people, but you have friends, you have business associates, where you can talk about these issues and not allow the needs of our community to go unnoticed.
Thank you for that.
Right. Such a warm audience, thank you.
So let's talk about some of your future work that you're working. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on your slate. I happen to have gone to college with the new president of your production company, your COO. So
Berkeley?
Yeah.
Oh, right on.
So we're all fascinated to know what's next because you're on the rise, and it's great to see. We're all supporters here. Tell us about some of the projects you're working on and how the community can rally. Because in the beginning of any project, it's always great to have that close community and support. So what can we look forward to that's coming from your camp?
Sure. I think PK, where's PK? PK, you around? Guys, give it up for PK. He did a great job tonight. And he came in at the last minute and really did this from his heart. So I'm really appreciative. He mentioned that I'm doing a live-action remake of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I don't know if some of your kids have seen that, but I'm playing the big bad guy in that, Fire Lord Ozai, and then I'm coming out in this. Well, actually, I can't tell you about that, but there's a fun project I'm a part of that'll be released this summer, and that's going to be in a theater near you. And one of the things I'm most excited about is I'm about to go to Korea for 6 months to start shooting a new series for Amazon that's a father-daughter relationship drama couched in the spy world. And it will be one of the first productions ever that unites an American cast with a Korean cast. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm also doing my company's producing a bunch of films. I don't know how many of you know who Chang Rae Lee is, but we're producing his first novel, Native Speaker, and there's also a new film that we're actually looking to raise funds for about the story of Bill Hwang. I don't know if you guys know who Bill Hwang is. Google it. That's all I'll say. Google it.
I think he has some friends here, so one of the amazing things about your life is and as someone we're all very busy here, but I have no idea if someone is like ghost posting on Instagram and Twitter for you, because it looks like you're in 3 different places at once, and you're working on 5 different projects, TV, film. What are the best ways that everyone here can, obviously you can't talk to everyone at length, but what are the best ways that people can follow your work, get involved? One thing, by the way, for the audience here, that everyone in LA Korean American galas knows, but we don't because we're all in tech or finance or law. The first 2 weeks of a theatrical release of a movie is super important. It is the most important thing for a new movie to have maximum box office sales. In TV, it's important for the first 3 episodes to be watched and then people to be, tweeting about it or posting on Instagram about it, telling their friends. So, by the way, whenever you see any of his work coming out, you might want to watch it later. You'll do a great service to all of us here, as well as Daniel, to go see it right away. Right?
But you know what? Don't go see it because of me, and I mean that. I'm not just being self-deprecating. See it because it's going to be good. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. It's not just about seeing something because X color is in it or X gender is the lead. We have a responsibility to be very good at our jobs, and I'm an entertainer, and that's what I aspire to be good at. at some point, you know, and it's the vision of the future I hope for, that we'll all be just using that as our criteria, but the movies will be populated with every race and every gender identity and obviously religion. So that is the place that I want to get to, and we're just not there yet. But you know, it's good to keep the eye on the prize.
So what he's saying is, still go see it, but if you don't like it, tweet at him or DM him.
That's right.
And he'll respond to you why. But honestly, everyone, you know, this is, you know, Soyoung here, who's on the board of KACF and chair of the gala. 2 years ago, she asked me, she's like, can you get DDK to come to San Francisco? I'm his biggest fan. And I said, yes.
I thought you were my biggest fan.
No, she's a bigger fan.
Okay.
And I said, you just do that, but just don't like tackle him when he shows up. But in any case, she wanted me to let you know that if you were to throw your hat in the ring on, you know, maybe move to California and run for something in California, she would be the first person to be your finance director on that campaign. I just...
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Where are you, Soyoung? I'm flattered, but 3 full-time jobs is enough for me right now.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, and a father too. Great.
Yeah, that too.
Everyone, to our future elected leader and our unofficial current leader, please give him a warm thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.